data with you on our events, and certainly these webinars have become very popular amongst the community, amongst the retail community. But this time in our registrations, 43, we were surprised to see 43% of the people who registered are the CEOs and founders, and 20% are the CFOs of the businesses, and only 15% are people from technology side, which is pretty interesting. And if you go by the industry wise, 27% are the retailers who have signed up, and 29% the techies, and 40% are the other businesses, which are actually, that means they are actually keeping an eye on what's happening in the retail business, which is pretty interesting to see. So we were very overwhelmed last week. Last week was our first event, which was a public event and open event, and we were overwhelmed the kind of questions, the number of questions, and I sincerely apologize we couldn't answer every question. So what we have done is this week we have curated our session. We asked you questions at the registration time itself, and we have curated our session based on the questions you've already given us during your registration time. And we'll try and answer whatever questions we can answer. Obviously, there are a lot of suggestions and notes given in your questions, which we will not be able to consider. But very soon, we are also launching a blog on 100 watt site, which will carry the answers for all the questions by the panelists, respective panelists. And you will see, and we'll send you the link soon. So before I introduce my panel to you, there is a disclaimer, a small disclaimer, that the views expressed by each panelist are their personal views, does not represent the company or the brand they belong to. So please consider these their personal views as retail professionals, as experienced retail professionals. So I wanted to start my introduction with Piyush. I'm not sure whether Piyush has joined or not.
I'm here, Ajay.
Good. So good morning, Piyush. You are a wonderful man. Suddenly we caught up. We didn't get a time to catch up with you.
Yes. Sorry, apologies for that.
Not at all. Piyush is a group global CIO for LuLu Group based out of Abu Dhabi. And it will be wonderful to hear from you what is happening outside India as far as this is concerned. Then I have a marathon man, Mr. Himanshu Chakravarti, CEO of Unlimited. I know Himanshu for almost more than 20 years now, and ever since he was part of Westside. And he's built a lot of businesses, Landmark, Westside, mobile stores, and many others. And it'll be interesting to hear his views about what's happening in the fashion industry. And Sandeep Jappal, he's a VP Technology and IT from Nihilent Foodworks. Very quiet man. That's why he's hiding behind the camera. He's not put his camera on. But he's very solid in whatever he does. And he's a man of very little words. And Nilesh, one of my favorite retailers, is always smiling. I've never seen this man, in a different mood than just smiling. And he has his own ways of running his business quietly, without any limelight. And it's interesting whenever I want to learn something about retail, I just give him a call and we have a chat. And it's always interesting to talk to him. Welcome, Nilesh.
Thank you, Ajay, for the kind words.
So friends, retail is going through a very strange time for the last few weeks. All of us who are retailers, we understand. All of us who are consumers, we are also experiencing what is happening in retail. And we are all getting used, as consumers, we're getting used to new way of life. As consumers, we are experiencing new retail experiences. Whereas on the other side, retailers are all over the place. They are completely confused. Some formats are shut. Some formats are partly open. Some are, trying to do their business in very difficult circumstances. So there are a lot of challenges they are struggling with. But all of us are learning as consumers and retailers, learning new lessons during this period. And I think those are the new lessons which will be very useful for retail to adapt or to understand and to go forward after this coronavirus gets over or lockdown gets over. Also, since China has already started coming out of corona, a lot of businesses have started going in, a lot of reports are coming in, and there are a lot of learnings which are coming in. We have to see how useful those will be for our environment, for Indian environment. But there's some interesting facts are coming out of China, and we'll discuss those things. So Piyush, let me start with you, because you're sitting somewhere outside in Abu Dhabi. What has been your observation during this outbreak and how things have changed? you have view of Indian retail, you have view of Middle East retail. So how things are different in both the territories, or it is similar, and what are the kind of challenges people are going through?
Thank you, Ajay, for having me, and good morning to every one of you, or good afternoon, actually, in India, and good morning for anybody out here. Uh, the way things are panning out is obviously known. The numbers are known and everything is known. But I think there are three scenarios that everybody is working towards. The first scenario is a very optimistic scenario, which has a probability of about 10 to 15% at this point of time, which is that everything will be normal in about a month's time, month and a half. The second scenario is that things will get normal in about 3 to 4 months' time, which is now running at the highest probability of about 60 to 70%. And then there is another very doomsday scenario is that it will go on for about 6 to 9 months. Yeah? And that is another about 10 to 15, 20% chance that everybody is pointing towards. So trying to be optimistic, most of the businesses that I have spoken to out here and to others in the western part of the world is that most of them have kind of factored in about 3 to 4 months of this impact into their business models. And so it means very different thing for different people. The first is the way of the behavior of the customer pre and post corona is going to change drastically, and that is something as a big reality that everyone is grappling with, as to how will the customer react after things become normal. There are theories in which people are saying that the shopping behavior will not be the same, and this will impact discretionary retail or discretionary spending quite a lot, which means that the way, for example, if I were to talk about fashion merchandise, the way fashion merchandise has to be assorted, it has to be very different from what it was in pre-corona or what it was in post-corona. If I were to take an example about, let's say, grocery as a format, the super fine formats of cheese and things like that, whether those are the categories which will again see the life of the day in the immediate future, maybe not. So everybody is kind of pivoting towards basics. How can we simplify our assortment, and how we can basically offer to the customer in a very, very simple form. And you asked me a very pertinent question as to what is one important aspect which is going to change after this. Now, as everyone in this, in the esteemed panel and everyone would know, that we have been talking about digital retail, omni retail, and things like that for the last 10 years. Yeah, I think that is all done. I think that is down the drain now. The new word is contactless retail. How can you make sure that you are able to still survive, do retail without the use of or without too much of dependence on human beings, and how you can automate a huge amount of operations in your retail chain, so that you are able to kind of react to this new way of customer interaction and behavior in the coming days and months which are in front of us.
So you said automate. Are you saying automate is becoming a important thing, which means if I say technology word, it is RPA or other kind of automation?
No, it is beyond that, I would say. So for example, as everyone would understand, that the best and the best e-com engines of the world have fallen flat in this kind of a scenario. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The best and the best of the run stores are either running out of stock, or either not able to cater to the demand which is out there. So what it means is that, I'll give you a very simple example. How can you decouple human dependency on fulfillment? That is one big theme that everybody, when I speak to all the retailers, they're talking about, you may have the best platform in the world, which can get n number of orders. But if your fulfillment engine is still dependent on human beings, I think that is where the bottleneck is going to be, and that is not in a position to serve to the needs of the modern consumer, or when I say contactless retail.
Good point, Piyush. Let me come back to you on this. So, Himanshu, you run 20 kilometers every day, 21 kilometers every day. The last so many weeks, you have been, your business is shut, almost shut. What do you think when you go on these runs, and what are you thinking during this time? And how do you think that, what are the kind of things you're planning that your stores, your business will get revived?
So I think let's just try and break this up into two or three broad buckets for easier understanding. And as Piyush was saying, I think nobody knows when the peak will happen and when therefore the lockdown effectively will get over. In between, we will see some motion here, there of some periods of lockdown getting over. But when is that peak? And till that time, everybody would be very circumspect. Of course, we know that that peak is not known to anyone. There is the BCG has done a detailed analysis. The long term on that is September in India. We do not know where it is going to go to. The short one that they have given is June is the optimistic scenario. And by that one does not mean that the lockdown will be lifted or not lifted. Essentially, it will be a very constrained environment, bits and pieces happening here, there. But till the time, let's say the peak happens and it goes away, we will be not able to operate the retail systems in the way we know. Of course, that will never be the same, but in the broad way. So one is in terms of what do you do in the period up to the lifting of the lockdown? Effectively lifting of the lockdown. So that's one aspect which we are working on. And I think that will be very important for everyone. And I'll come back to this in a bit. The second aspect is as the lockdown opens up, it'll open up not in one go. It'll start happening in bits and pieces. Of course, do remember that fashion is not essentials. Yeah. So therefore, the government is not going to take a very kind view of opening up fashion very quickly. And within that, of course, high street would be slightly easier. Malls would be even more tough because people getting into confined air-conditioned spaces is going to be a bit of a challenge in the foreseeable future, which is when the lockdown starts opening up. Now, how do we prepare for when this happens? Because it will happen in a staggered manner. It will happen locality by locality. It will happen city by city, state by state, and in a staggered manner. So how do you prepare for that? And we'll again come back to that because that's very important. Yeah. And last but not the least is when we come back to some sort of normalcy, and the new normal will never be the same as the old normal. I think we all know that. None of us can define what the new normal would be, but I think we all know that the new normal is not going to be the same as the old normal. And I think building scenarios in terms of anticipating what will happen in the new normal when everything becomes more calm and more normal than would happen over the next few months, what happens during that phase. And I'll come back to that as well again. So let's start with the first one, which is in terms of what happens, the first bucket, what happens during the lockdown period. Yeah. During the lockdown period, of course, is the whole thing in terms of first and foremost taking care of your own people. How do you keep them occupied? How do you keep them busy? How do you make them productive? How do you do planning? How do you do things? I think that becomes very important. And I think communication and constant communication and almost making it work like regular is important. Although with the store teams, it is very difficult. It is much easier to do it with the regional and the corporate teams, even with the store managers. But with the CSAs, the frontline employees, it is very difficult to keep them engaged and occupied. We are trying, I think everybody is trying their own bit in doing that. The second key aspect is, do remember that during this time, there are no cash flows. Yeah. So how do you really get the team together? How do you manage the cash flows with the whole thing of ecosystem of you're not having any cash flows, but some of the expenses remain? And how do you really tackle that? How do you make sure that you go through this period when there is no cash flows coming in as a retailer? The third aspect of this, of course, and I think that's equally important, is the planning on when the store system reopens. Second and third phases I talked about are the entire planning for it. So we are spending a lot of time on the planning part for the second and the third, which is immediately when the lockdown opens and when then it stabilizes. Now coming to the second part, which is when the store system starts opening up, retail system starts opening up, and it'll open, as I said, in a staggered manner. It'll not be all in one shot, not even close to one shot. It'll be very staggered. Yeah. Now, when that happens, we have to look at, one is, of course, what do you need to do to make it comfortable for the customers to shop? And I will not go into details of that because it's very well known as to what everybody is planning, from your temperature measurement to fumigation to steam ironing of clothes, etc., maintaining distance markers, not too many people inside. I think all those are known, so we will not get into what is to be done there when we do it. But you will actually have the other challenge. The other challenge is that your partner ecosystem and your own employees, getting them back into the system and working as it opens in a staggered manner is going to be a challenge, because you will have a situation where you have employees in a store and some of them, and quite a few of them, actually have either gone back to their hometowns, or even if they have not gone back to the hometowns, in a city you will have some locations opening up and an adjacent location 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers away is shut. So people can't move out from there. Yeah. So how do you really have how do you manage that manpower challenge? And the same thing will happen with your service providers, be it your people who work with you on the security services side, housekeeping side, and even the, let's say, warehouse side, from where you expect the inventory to come in. Yeah. Because that most people have, other than food industry, I'm talking about fashion, have at best regional warehouses. Most of us have central warehouses. Yeah. Which means central means one warehouse or two warehouses which caters to all the store system. So that itself is going to be a big, humongous challenge in terms of in that phase, how do you make these stores actually work during that phase? Yeah. Then we come to the, in that intervening period, we will not go into what the consumer will want or not want. We all know that not too many people will come into fashion stores, because if you really understand it correctly, they are largely going to be focused on their regular needs: food, grocery, fish, meat, kids' education. Don't forget, lots of all the hospitals' regular operations have been all held up because of this crisis. Yeah. People will have a lot of expenditures. Everybody has got somebody or the other, or lot of families have got somebody or the other who will be requiring treatment to be done. All that is suspended as of now. That's an expense that will come to you. So, and on top of that, of course, in this whole phenomena from here till the time the opening up happens and beyond, we will see either loss of salaries or we will see loss of jobs. I think that's known to everybody, and we are not trying to put a number to it because nobody really knows that number. Different industries, RAI has its own estimate, NRAI has its own estimate, CAIT has its own estimate. Go by whatever number you feel like, but there is going to be, and then you have the SMEs and production and the rest of the things. So there is going to be significant loss of jobs, and even people who have jobs, the salaries, forget about increments, the salaries themselves are likely to be lower than it was in the last year. So therefore, people are not going to prioritize fashion, and this is actually the point that Piyush was making in the field of food. Yeah, but beyond food, we are much beyond food, and therefore not too many people are immediately going to come back to our stores or otherwise. Yeah. So how do you deal with the situation in the intervening period with all these challenges? And then we come to the third phase, and I'll just take 2-3 minutes quickly, and then we'll come back to it at some point of time in the course of the discussion. Is what happens in the slightly longer term, which is 6 months, 8 months, 7 months away from now. And I think there are 3 or 4 trends which we are all familiar with. Well, the first one, of course, is the whole concept of the customers not wanting to come to the stores. Large number of customers, even if they want to come to the stores, they wouldn't want to spend too much time in the store. So how do you therefore enable everything which is as far as possible contactless? Yeah. Whether it is payment system, therefore cash component has to go down. Whether it is the payment system, whether it is e-shop and collect, whether it is last mile home delivery, from even for fashion, every aspect that you do, how do you really reduce the contact that the customer has with your physical space? And that will be a big theme in the next 6, 8, 10, 12 months. As I said, that the new normal will be not the same as the old normal. And therefore, from the preparedness as an organization, we need to be prepared in terms of creating solutions around this whole thing. But again, it will also bring us to one more important point, and I think that is very critical. There are two more aspects that will come into play. Manufacturing will go through its own massive churn in this intervening period. Now, how many of our manufacturers will survive, we do not know. Yeah. So therefore, the manufacturing base itself will churn, and how do we manage that to have a least impact over the 8, 9, 10 months? And more importantly, along with that is how do we make our entire mechanism extremely flexible, not to go through this whole long range fashion planning that is done. That is going to be for sure out of the window. This long range fashion planning is completely out of the window. How do you therefore have a shorter time frame for planning for fashion? And that's the change that we will see as far as this is concerned. And along with that, don't forget, after this, we come out of this, sustainability will be a big issue again. So how do we structure ourselves around sustainability? So those are broadly the things that we are working on, beyond, of course, the P&L and how does it, and cash flows and how does it stack up.
Thanks, Himanshu. Yeah, thank you. Let me come to, thank you for this detailed thing. We'll pick a lot of points from this. So Sandeep, you are running, not full capacity from 1,300 stores. You're only running 800 plus stores. Yeah, and that too, you're not running full capacity. But on the other hand, you decided to also add a new service in your whole portfolio, which is grocery delivery and essentials delivery to your customers. So I want to ask 2 points in this. What is the logic of doing this, and how did you manage to stitch it into your whole system so quickly?
Thanks, Ajay. I'll take the first one. There is no logic. It's a part of our service to nation initiative. It's not a line of business that we're looking at. So there was a lot of demand from the people, and there were these partners approaching us. So we took it up, and this is a company which has been present nationwide, a brand which is known to everyone. So we decided to do it as a service. So we're not charging it anything extra for this service. There are no delivery charges, of course. So this is purely, an initiative to serve the country. Second part is that how do we manage to do it quickly? Of course, it was a challenging task, and we had a cross-functional team almost, glued to their Microsoft team groups for almost about 5 to 7 days. Trying to bring out information, workflows, everything was done on a remote conferencing platform, and it was challenging. But at the same time, we had a lot of motivation from our leaders to go and deliver it. So of course, there were a lot of challenges like different tax rates for different items. It was not same as what we used to sell. So different teams collaborating in a bit different way. All the testings that used to happen, being physically present, were all being done remotely. So a lot of learnings for our technology team as well. And I think it was what we call now in our own terminology is a super agile way of delivering things. So I think because we were a few days into this remote working, all teams put together. So I think it was a new way that we evolved. We were not used to these things, but I think the motivation and kind of the feel good factor that we felt after delivering this was a kind of a motivation which helped us to deliver. It was not something that took us a long time to figure out. The good thing was that we decided to go very simple with kind of a combos instead of different SKUs. So we tried to keep it simple in order to deliver it in a very fast time frame. And now we are gradually. We started with one city. That now we're going to other cities. We started in Delhi NCR also now. We are having other partnerships also coming up. So that's how we approached it.
So tell me, this delivery of essentials along with your food products, is this something which you're going to continue, or this is temporarily or serving only during the Corona time?
See, Ajay, this is not along with our food. Let me make it very clear. You are free to order essentials without ordering a pizza. So we've kept it completely different. You need not order any pizza and order essentials. So you can order only essentials. There is no delivery charge. It's available at MRP. Second thing, we have not taken a call because, like I said, it's a service nation. We're not looking at it as a revenue line as of now. So there's no decision on that. And we are in business of pizza. So we more or less will continue to do that in coming times.
Thanks. Now let me come to my most favorite retailer, Mr. Nilesh Gupta, the coolest man. Now your stores are completely shut. We had this discussion last time, and where you mentioned that how you have gone through this whole exercise of, and so tell us like how you are engaging with your manpower. In what I understood from my discussions with you was, for you, your people working with you are the most important assets. And how are you engaging with them, and how are you getting ready to get back to business hereafter?
Good afternoon, everybody. The basic thing what I feel is we cannot now, the times have totally changed, and we'll have a new definition of a BC, that is before COVID and after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the reality which is there. And we are not looking at a 45 days window or a 60 days window or a quarter or second quarter, third quarter. What we are now looking at is at a long-term view of at least minimum 1 year. And as far as consumer durable is concerned, we know because the buying is not going to happen except for those people whose products have conked out and they have no other avenue but to change. Very few people will be buying initially, and it all depends upon how this virus moves around. So we are seeing at least a long-term 1 year window where we feel the only thing what everybody of us should be looking at is how to survive in this 1 year, next 1 year. Because all the people who will survive this onslaught, growth will come later and it will come. Everybody will get those numbers. Whatever anybody has projected for the next 5 years, I think you'll be able to achieve the numbers if you are able to survive in this 1 year. Now, coming back to the manpower question, which Ajay, you have asked, what I personally feel is in the retail where we have been, or we are rather there, people have never got time with their families or have never got time to spend time with their families beyond the festival days at home. Although this is not the best way to spend time, let me clarify that with your family. But I think this must be the first Gudi Padwa when my team was not coming early and going late and spend the entire Gudi Padwa day with their family. Whatsoever, but at least the closeness was there. So what we have done up till now is we have not done much of trainings and all, although we'll be starting now. We already started a little. But frankly speaking, those trainings and all will not help anyone. It's only the way of keeping your flock together. That's the only purpose is going to solve, because at the end of the day, all of us know whatever we train, if it is not implemented immediately, people will tend to forget. So I think the moot question is how to survive. I think that's what everybody has to look at. It is the survival of the fittest is going to be there. So all fancy things have to go away from the businesses. Only what is essential has to be kept, and we have to go on surviving in this tough times. And you have to look at a longer window. Don't look at monthly, quarterly, or half yearly. At least look at 1 year and 2 years and 3 years.
So I want to ask one question. Somebody like you, for example, you will be whenever you open your business, you'll be sitting on a huge amount of inventory, of various merchandise, various products. And what will be your what is the strategy you're looking at right now to look at how to liquidate that inventory, and whether a businessman like you will make use of technology, or you will go with your gut of dealing with that. So what's the kind of thinking somebody like you is going through?
See, as far as strategy goes, if you ask me, no strategy is going to work right now.
Mm-hmm.
See, let us understand, these are very, very tough times which no one has seen in their lifetime. Even those who are in 70s and 80s have never seen these times. And I just pray and hope that nobody ever sees it again. So even if I have a strategy of advertising, if I have a strategy of giving at my cost, or maybe taking a hit and selling it at 10% lower than my cost also, nobody is going to come and buy because it's coming cheaper. So I think there's no strategy which is there. Is the thing is, you'll have to go with the flow. Yes, everybody is stuck with inventory as it is. You have to understand, in consumer durable, we were, before the COVID struck, we were entering into a summer season where, as it is, the air conditioning and the refrigeration, the compressor product stocks are on the higher side. So I think it's a reality with which you'll have to live. And as I said, we are not planning or we are not expecting anything. The only way to do is as and when the things open up, and how And this entire scenario is going to pan out how the virus spreads. Tomorrow, if you have a scenario where after 60 days it opens and they say virus is behind us, then I think everything will start getting to normalize quite soon. But if we open, even after 30 days, 20 days, 15 days, with virus sitting on our head, then I think it's a very long haul which we have to look at.
So I'm very pleased to see one of our retail veterans, Mr. Biju Kurian. He's in the audience right now. And may I request Biju? Thank you very much for joining us. May I request you to make your comments on what you heard till now and what is your view quickly for a minute, please, if you can hear us.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Perfect. Okay.
Rahul, can I request you to put Vijay on the screen?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry. Let me just start my video too.
Yeah.
So, from what I think, everybody is saying that there is a certain degree of uncertainty, and it is clear that there is going to be uncertainty as we look into the future. So that is one part of it. Now, how does this uncertainty translate into different product categories and the impact it will have on different retailers is also something that we are not extremely clear about. One of the general assumptions has been that food and grocery will certainly not have too much of an impact, whereas fashion, eating out, travel, hospitality will certainly have a lot more in terms of impact. And depending on where most of our fortunes lie, we will obviously have to figure out how the impact of that is going to be on our businesses. So that is one part of it. The second part, I think, is that from what I'm seeing, and some of the hesitation I see from people in terms of conjecturing about what the future will be, is because nobody really knows how consumer behavior is going to translate, and consumer behavior will be shaped by what has happened to us. Plus, it will also be shaped by the fact that how do consumers see as what is important in terms of value to them as they step out into the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, etc. For example, if you were to ask students today how easy is it to study online, you'll find a lot of them saying that, hey, I didn't think it is going to be so easy and I should have probably done this before. And if you look at the advertisers in newspaper today, it is startups like Baiju and others. All of them are people who are depending on online education. So this whole concept might actually irreversibly trend towards more people studying online than what we thought in the future. Than what we thought in the past. So I think so there might be some of the changes which will be happening to people, which are very difficult to predict at this point of time. But once these changes happen, those changes will also have implications as far as each of our businesses is concerned. So the priorities, the values that consumers will hold dear, the changes in consumer behavior will make understanding the consumer of the future a lot more complex. And because of which, assessing the impact on our business and how long will it take for us to recover is a lot more difficult. So there is one whole thing which is all around that. The second part of it is that we've got businesses to run, and we've got to figure out ways to survive. And I think all of us will get into a creative best in terms of minds, and that's what I'm hearing from everybody, which is that how do we actually end up with trying to make sure that we have enough cash to help us manage our expenses into the foreseeable future, because there is uncertainty about revenues. So I think that is where a lot of us will actually end up in terms of putting our creative caps on best, and whether we're going to be trying to push the banks, whether we're going to be trying and pushing investors, whether we're going to be trying and deferring payments to our suppliers, whether we're going to call back our debtors as quickly as possible. All of these will be ways and means in which we're going to be in which we will actually try and preserve cash in the business. So I think the ability for us to be able to preserve cash and the ability for us to be able to understand consumer behavior and its implications for how the business actually ramps up in the future will be the two critical aspects that we need to look at when we, run our businesses as business leaders and look at this uncertain situation that we are in today. So thanks, Ajay, for that.
Thank you, Biju. And you are doing a wonderful job. I believe you're feeding 50,000 people in Bangalore meals, meals a day. Continue doing that. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ajay. Thank you very much.
God bless you. And happy Easter to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And the same to everybody on the call.
So let me come back to my panel. And let me ask people like Himanshu and Piyush on about this allocation of unsold inventories and how you're going to handle it, whether technology or gut, how it will work. I think this is going to be a very important question to answer, irrespective of how the consumers behave in the times to come. So, Himanshu, would you like to take that first?
So I think one thing which is quite certain in the next multiple months is that there will be significant pressure in terms of the prices. The prices, there is going to be hefty discounting. So that is quite clear. We are going to see a sustained period of let's say discounting going on. And therefore that will erode the margins further for, I'm talking about fashion business here, and it'll erode the margins. As far as the inventories is concerned, I think what everyone has done, including us, and I think that's because it happened quickly. I think a lot of the orders have been, if not cancelled, have been put have been suspended. Yeah, and as I was saying, fashion is slightly long cycle. It is not short. This is for your own labels. It's slightly long cycle. And therefore, most of us actually, not just us, but around the industry, around the world, have either cancelled the orders in large numbers or have kept the orders in suspension. In any case, the manufacturers can't produce right now because they're shut, the ecosystem is shut. So it's all on paper. Really, whatever you're doing is all on paper till the time manufacturing opens up. So my sense is, in any case, because the customers would be very few in fashion, the discounting would be high. And what will also happen is within a few months, we will realize, after opening up, we'll realize that we really don't have that much inventory in the ecosystem. Because don't forget, the missing 2-3 months of production itself is going to reduce the overall quantum of inventory available. So that's really how one sees this from the industry point of view. In fact, we have done our own modeling, but as Vijay was saying, the uncertainty is so much. Whether you do 20% of your business, 40% of your business, 60%, which month, how much, when will malls open up, when will HICE, we do not know. There's so many variables. You can keep doing as many, planning for as many situations as you want. But I think what is imperative is we will have discounting, and one needs to be careful with what one orders, even when manufacturing opens up, because the downside of your not having too much inventory is very limited. Yeah. So therefore, everybody is going to play easy on ordering inventory. The downside is very little of not ordering enough.
Piyush, in your view, you are on global. Your footprint is global. So what is your plan in terms of, are you going to move inventory from one region to the other, or how are you going to manage it, and what is the role of technology in that?
Sure, and I will try to give a little bit of context here. So obviously, as people would know, Middle East actually from a food perspective produces nothing, almost next to nothing. And everything is all imported out from all the countries. And so what was important in terms of this sourcing which was out there, and I think all the retailers out here had taken the right steps at the right time, that they basically understood what is needed for people to survive. And this may have a very long-term impact in terms of food behaviors of people, is what we feel, is that our range, which would be around 35,000 to 40,000 products, was kind of brought down to about 800 to 1,000 products, which kind of caters to about 90-95% of the food basket. Yeah. So that 5% or 10% long tail or 15% long tail that we have is actually not being sourced at this point of time. It is that 80% which is being sourced, and those things are flying off like hot cakes at this point of time. Now, whether this trend will continue post Corona or not is something that only time can tell. The second trend that we see here is that a lot of people, I know it's a different case in India, but at least here, a lot of people have not experienced full-time cooking and eating. Yeah, this is a very new phenomenon for a lot of people in the Western countries and in this place as well. So will that behavior completely transform consumer eating habits? And if that happens, obviously it is a very different scenario for a food retailer like us and anybody else to basically plan your assortment and merchandise to cater to that need. Yeah. So there are these fundamental changes which have happened during this time. Now only time can tell whether these are long-term impacts which will continue or not. But my sense and what we are hearing from a lot of people is that people will, at least in as Vijay was saying, it will be at least for a year, people will be extra cautious, and that 800 to 1000 will still continue to be the prime basket for people for a very long time. And so what it means is we had to basically up our stocking capacity overnight for these items, considering the lockdown and the flights being cancelled and so on and so on. So it was a test of somebody's agility, as I would call it. And although people have been talking about agile organizations, agile business models for a very long time, I think this is where agility of an organization is tested to the peak, that the flights are going to be cancelled in about 10 days. You have 10 days for all your 800 to 1000 SKUs to be sourced from about 22 countries all over the world, so that you can sustain for about 2 to 3 months. And this is not a very easy task to be done. What people do take maybe weeks and months together to plan in Excel sheets and things like that. And so sometimes these agile ways of working are something which are bringing a lot of creativity in the organizations, and a lot of people are coming together. Although people are working remotely, they're able to collaborate very well, and they're able to come up with business ideas which are very, very unique. Who would think Domino's will start sending essential item? Who would think LMVH, Louis Vuitton will start manufacturing surgical masks? Who would think that a lot of other businesses which have nothing to do with that business are able to do things of any other business? And this is a classic case of disrupting your business model. And I think this is a very fantastic opportunity wherein a lot of organizations who are adopting this and taking it in a positive way are able to look at innovation, look at changing ways of working, so that they are able to sustain that agility in the days after the lockdown or the situation becomes normal.
Thank you, Piyush. So now let me come to Sandeep and Nilesh. Nilesh, this so-called contactless delivery and the omni-channel, and like Piyush said, omni-channel is out of the way. And some views that the omni-channel is not a choice anymore. It is a necessity of every business now. And how somebody like you, for example, will be more online ready, especially somebody like you who's always competing with giants like Amazon and Flipkart or anybody else in your category. So how do you plan to make yourself ready, enabled for that situation?
See, already if you see, we have our online site ready, which is doing business and all, but only because of the price issues, the business was not there. So if the consumer is going to come online, we are prepared for that. But as far as contactless delivery is concerned, in our case, you cannot have a contactless delivery for air conditioner or a refrigerator. At the most, you can have a contactless delivery for mobile and accessory. So I think there are certain things that people will change. And as I said, as far as consumer durable is concerned, till COVID is hovering around, business is going to be quite muted. It's once the COVID goes away. Now, whether it goes away on its own due to temperature or whatever it is, or we get a cure for it, and by the time we get vaccinations, once that happens, then I think everything will go back to normal. See, only thing what will happen in this interim period of COVID, a lot of people would have, possibly a few of them, not a lot, I would say, would have moved on to online buying. So that slight habit changes may happen. And all said and done, whatever consumer habits would change now, believe me, post normalcy returns, the habits will also return back.
Are you sure about that?
Yes. Unless and until we are seeing COVID for a very long time, which I hope and pray never happens.
So Sandeep, you are a mixed model right now, and you are virtually online right now in terms of whether either phone call or through. How much do you think your customers base will continue to stay online? And you said 45% of 50% of your business is in store dining. How much do you think that will change? Will that lead to change in your store formats or?
See, I won't comment on the percentage right now, but consumer behavior is going to change for a very, very long time, is what I strongly believe. Contactless is not going to be only in the delivery. We would surely see the contactless behavior coming in the store very soon. People may want to just sit on their table, scan a QR code, and order their stuff. Digital payments are going to be a big thing in store as well. Contactless would go to that level. They would pay from their mobile app, and they will just collect the order and eat it. The second big thing is going to be differentiator between repeated brands and non-repeated brands, or the other non-organized dine-in restaurants. There will be a lot of focus on the hygiene. People would not just be going by a visible somebody wiping off a table. They would actually want to see the table I'm sitting on when it was kind of sanitized last, and the entire restaurant may have a digital display. The entire restaurant was sanitized. You may have a temperature of the people, something around that. How healthy are the people in that environment, and you may have a kind of a checklist similar to what you see sometimes on the door of washroom, being digitized and put up in a restaurant in a digital format, that this restaurant goes green, 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 and all these formats of hygiene. So that would be a big differentiator. The sooner the restaurants and other businesses who are associated with food, or let's say medical supplies, or where human contact or there is a risk of hygiene or contamination, the sooner they adopt these things, the better the customers will choose them as the leaders to go to in the market. So consumer behavior is going to change in favor of all those businesses who take hygiene and contactless and digital. These three things are going to be of prime importance, and this will be there for a sustained time, and this may eventually become a behavior which is permanent, because world, as we are talking, world has changed permanently, will change post COVID. So I do see these contactless digital payments and the hygiene part, visible hygiene, certified hygiene. These things would come into play when people will choose their dining destinations.
Thanks. Himanshu, I want to know, somebody like you, are you also looking at planning in terms of more?
Ajay, we can't hear you.
Looking at contactless, if at all, when it comes to hygienic and contactless retail. So what kind of changes, steam mining and all? But apart from that, when I really order a fashion sitting at home now, what are the kind of new experiences you think consumers will be looking for?
So I think, and we, of course, in our case, we are more of affordable fashion. We are not at the premium end, so we are at a more affordable end of the market. I think from the perspective of the customer, there is a huge association with the shop from where they buy, and the repeat pattern is extremely high 90s from the same shop repeatedly. So what is very important is, in terms of the experience that we create for the customer, is to give the experience of that store. So you may have it from your digital device, but you should be able to get the experience of that store that you're comfortable with. Yeah. I'm not getting into how we will go around doing it. The second aspect, which is very important, is that even if they decide to come to the store to pick it up, they don't want to spend much time. Can we do a mechanism whereby they can just pick it up from the security at the entrance through a code exchange? Yeah. So they don't need to spend time. And even for customers who come into the store, we will not have the trial rooms running for a long period of time. That will be a primary carrier of anybody having the virus. So that's a big constraint for fashion industry. In fact, it'll be as a responsible retailer, and I think most retailers will end up doing that. You will not have the trial room functioning. Since you will not have the trial rooms functioning, how do you therefore use technology to give customer the assurance that if it is from the nearby store that I'm doing everything with you, if you take a wrong size, you can just call me up or put it on the app or put it on the website, and I can exchange it for you at home. Yeah, the size, largely it is size exchange. Yeah, the size exchange is the largest component. So how do you therefore enable that without, and then of course what comes back to you, you can always demine that and put it back. But how do you therefore build in these mechanisms to ensure, even for payments, for example, it will largely need to make it contactless. There should be virtually no paper or plastic requirement. Either have QR codes, UPI, other payment mechanisms. We're not going to get into it. But how do you make as much as possible for the consumer the whole experience of a kind where his presence in the store is limited if required, or if he doesn't want to come to the store, how do I deliver the merchandise from the nearest store to him?
Piyush, are we looking at experiences? Like somebody like your group must be running a big, large loyalty programs or reward programs. And how do you want to basically, what is your understanding from that in terms of building new experiences in this context? And how do you want to reconnect back with your customer base thereafter?
Correct. And luckily, because of the nature of the geography here, the only two places where people are flocking now is one is the grocery stores and second is hospitals for all the wrong reasons. And so we are not seeing that dip in terms of footfalls to the food section. Now, obviously, the big challenge, as everyone was alluding to, our department stores and the fashion store is totally shut. Yeah, as per directive, it is shut, or there is no sales happening. How do you come back when things bring up or things come back to normal? How do you make sure that you are able to encourage the customer to go to the other parts of the store and start shopping? That would be a big thing. And what we are trying to work on is that obviously online and stuff like that will get a major impetus. This region as such is having the highest mobile penetration of 4G data and above. About 98 or 99% of people here have 4G data connection, right? One of the highest in the world. But unfortunately, the category of online shopping was still not very high as compared to most of the developed economies. So what we see is that this trend has been given a significant boost, and none of the retailers, be it the best and the best of the world which are here, are able to cope up to the demand which is out here, which may be a temporary phenomenon. But I think we feel that 30 to 40% who are just first-time triers of this kind of experience will still hang on to some kind of online shopping in the future as well. So naturally, you are bringing in a kind of doubling of at least the consumer base, people who are open to online shopping, and that change or tilt towards that online channel becoming a more predominant channel. We have to reinvent our model. Yeah, we are 100%, or our online was very small, and because of the nature of the category that we operate in, and B, obviously the customer preference. But when the new normal comes in, that a large proportion of your consumers are going to prefer the online channel, have to move, and we have to start offering these kind of solutions. So we are working towards that, and I think most of the retailers out here are strongly working. So I will give you an example. There are malls which are totally shut. Now, there are 2 or 3 players who have already said, we will put a mall marketplace, which means that even though you are not supposed to open the mall, you can still open a marketplace of the mall when things comes back up. Yeah, so people are working on those kind of solutions in which Dubai Mall will come up as an online or a digital Dubai Mall. There will be a digital Mall of Emirates. There will be which are all marquee names where people from all over the world come and shop. So they are seriously thinking and building platforms by which they are able to transact to the customer through an online channel. So these are very fundamental changes which are going to happen. So who would imagine that Dubai Mall people have to go and shop online? Yeah. So we see that trend continuing.
Okay, so last question to everybody. 30 seconds each. We are again running out of time, and we've got a lot of questions and a lot of comments. And I think we're covering some of them we've already covered. Uh, uh, in this uncertainty of period and time frame, we are talking of a lot of cash requirement, and cash flow is going to be a big thing. So what is your view on managing? How are you going to manage your capital during this time, and how are you going to, what are the kind of models you have in mind, and how do you of uncertainty, and especially also retain your employees is equally important for each brand. Let me start with Nilesh, because you are sort of a pioneer with people engagement, employee engagement.
See, the only way we can do this is cut everything which is non-essential to the business. No more good to have things should be there on the block. Everything has to be cut, chopped off. Only must-haves and must-haves. And even the must-haves, we should fine-tune and make it more must-have. And we should only put in money over there. That's the only way we can take care of the cash flows. So ultimately, I think we are coming back to an old economy where fundamentals is the core, and any businesses which have been working on the fundamentals, I think, will survive.
Sandeep, what do you say? I mean,
Zero-based budgeting.
you're still turning cash, but still you have to maintain 500 stores which are not functional right now, and also a large part of manpower which you're still retaining, which are on your books.
Yeah, so the go-to mantra is zero-based budgeting. Look at everything, reimagine the business, because the business model could change forever post-COVID, during COVID for us as well. So we are looking at every investment, particularly in technology, because technology we tend to do more things from a futuristic perspective. So again, we're looking at zero-based budgeting, every line item in very detail. So trying to preserve cash, trying to put on hold certain things which may not seem relevant, particularly in dining perspective, which will take a hit for quite some time. So that's the thing. We are relooking at everything. It's not like, look at the last year budget and then do the budgeting for current year. So entire budget exercise is kind of being redone, and in the change scenario, in certain areas we are putting in more money as well, and digital and all these payments, contactless payments, and the new payment channels. So money may be diverted from some other things to things which are more relevant in the COVID scenario. But yes, I totally agree with what Nilesh just said, that we are looking at every line item from a very, very fresh new post-COVID perspective.
Let me modify my question a little bit for Himanshu and Piyush. When you're looking at this, cash as the biggest problem, and also the challenges are that you need to invest in technology. How are you going to bring that balance? What is the way? Because when you implement technology, there's a lot of cost involved. So what is the model? What is the strategy you have in terms of investing in technology? Himanshu.
So as far as we are concerned, I think the primary thing is in terms of the survival instinct, and the primal survival instinct has to come into play in business. There is no other option available other than the primal survival instinct. And how do you do that? And people are saying about zero-based budgeting, this, that, etc. But essentially, do not from scratch start and only have expenses that you need to have absolute must. The downside is very little of loss of business in the foreseeable future. So don't be scared, absolute primal instinct. On technology, which is what we were discussing and you're talking about, I think we need to look at new models. Why should I pay a single fixed dollar to anybody? He should partake, any solution provider has to partake on a variable basis with me. Everybody, they need to modify their own business models. There is no free lunch, and nobody is going to give it to them. We're all going to struggle with our own cash flows, primal survival instinct. And as a result of which, there is not a single free dollar available. And everything has to be earned, and earned jointly with us as partners, has to be earned through collaboration and earned through end results that are being delivered.
Thank you. That is a very important input. Piyush, what is your understanding?
Yeah, so obviously all our esteemed panelists have covered most of the things. Conserve cash as much as possible. But one thing which we are practicing.
I'm talking in the context of technology spend,
Correct. So I would kind of break it into two parts. One is obviously while you conserve cash and do everything, make sure that you channelize cash towards people, because retail at the heart of it is all about the people who run the retail business. So everything else can be brought back up within no time. But if you lose your key people at this point of time, for that business to come back up, it is going to be a very, very tough pass. So all the retailers should actually look at conserving cash with the right people also. So that is one. The second part is, when you say technology, Himanshu, I think, pointed at the very, very fundamental of the way technology was looked at. Technology was looked at from a cost perspective. And I think it is time that all the businesses start to look at how do we basically attach every spend or every dollar which is spent on technology to the incremental high top line or the bottom line. And I think everybody in the chain, right from the infrastructure provider till the application provider, everybody needs to rethink their business model and then deliver and align to this reality that are coming to happen in this.
Thanks. Last word from you, Nilesh, on this.
I think the only thing is everybody should only think of survival and nothing else as of now.
No, I was asking in the context of your spend on technology.
Technology spend as it is, we don't have a very high technology spend. And secondly, so I think for us, compared to our turnover, our technology spend is comparatively less. So I think that's not much of an issue for us.
Okay, and you think that won't be important for you to end in this
No,
time?
Now technology is going to play a major role. In fact, what we would have achieved or we would have done post 3 or 4 years, I think we'll be starting to do it now. So definitely online, omni-channel, everything we'll be looking at it.
Thank you very much. It was a fascinating discussion from everybody, and we've just finished our time. And thank you for participation, for being a lovely audience.
Thank you.
Full house today. And enjoy your Sunday, enjoy your Easter, and special Sunday today, though we have been at home. Thank you once again to everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.